Chapter 7. The Egyptian boy wandered off along the alley, made a couple of right-angle turns, and came out in one of the many roads that radiate from Trafalgar Square. I was revising my plans as I went. Forget the square. Too many irritating children around. But perhaps if I found a shelter close by, the amulet's pulse would still be hard for the spheres to locate. I could hole up behind some dustbins until the morning came. It was the only option. I was too weary to take to the skies again. And I wanted to do some thinking. The old pain had started up again, throbbing in my chest, stomach, bones. It wasn't healthy to be encased in a body for so long. How humans can stand it without going completely mad, I'll never know. I stumped down the dark, cold street, looking at my reflection as it flitted across the blank squares of the windows alongside. The boy's shoulders were hunched against the wind, his hands deep in his jacket pockets. His trainers scuffed the concrete. His posture perfectly expressed the annoyance I was feeling. The amulet beat against my chest with every step. If it had been in my power, I would have ripped it off and lobbed it into the nearest bin before dematerializing in high dudgeon. But I was bound by the orders of the child's command. I had to keep it with me. I took a side road away from the traffic. The massed darkness of high buildings closed in on either side, oppressing me. Cities get me down, almost as if I am underground. London is particularly bad. Cold, gray, heavy with odors and rain. It makes me long for the south, for the deserts and the blank blue sky. Another alley led off to the left, choked with wet cardboard and newspapers. Automatically I scanned through the planes, saw nothing. It would do. I rejected the first two doorways for reasons of hygiene. The third was dry. I sat there. It was high time I thought through the events of the night so far. It had been a busy one. There was the pale-faced boy, Simon Lovelace, the amulet, Jabor, Farquharel. A pretty hellish brew all around. Still, what did it matter? At dawn I would hand over the amulet and escape this sorry mess for good. Except for my business with the boy. He'd pay for it big time. You didn't reduce Bartimaeus of Uruk to dossing in a West End alley back and expect to get away with it. First, I'd find out his name. Then, wait. Footsteps in the alley. Several pairs of boots approaching. Perhaps it was just coincidence. London's a city. People use it. People use alleys. Whoever was coming was probably just taking a shortcut home. Up the very alley that I happened to be hiding in. I don't believe in coincidences. I shrank back into the doorway's shallow well of darkness and cast a concealment upon myself. A layer of tightly laced black threads covered me where I sat in the shadows, blending me into the murk. I waited. The boots drew nearer. Who might it be? A night police patrol? A phalanx of magicians sent by Simon Lovelace. Perhaps the spheres had spotted me after all. It was neither police nor magicians. It was the children from Trafalgar Square. 5 boys with the girl at their head. They were dawdling along, looking casually from side to side. I relaxed a little. I was well hidden, and even if I hadn't been, there was nothing to fear from them now that we were out of the public gaze. Admittedly, the boys were big and loutish looking, but they were still just boys, dressed in jeans and leathers. The girl wore a black leather jacket and trousers that flared wildly from the knees down. There was enough spare material there to make a second pair for a midget. Down the alley they came, scuffling through the litter. I realized suddenly how unnaturally silent they were. In doubt, I checked the other planes again. On each, everything was just as it should be. 6 children. Hidden behind my barrier, I waited for them to go past. The girl was in the lead. She drew level with me. Safe behind my barrier, I yawned. One of the boys tapped the girl's shoulder. "It's there," he said, pointing. "Get it," the girl said. Before I had a chance to get over my surprise, 3 of the burliest boys leaped into the doorway and crashed down upon me. As they touched the concealment wisps, the threads tore and dissolved away into nothingness. For an instant, I was overwhelmed by a tidal wave of distressed leather, cheap aftershave, and body odor. I was sat upon, punched, and smacked about the head. I was bundled unceremoniously to my feet. Then, I reasserted myself. I am Bartimaeus, after all. The alley was illuminated by a brief discharge of heat and light. The bricks of the doorway looked as if they had been seared on a griddle. To my surprise, the boys were still holding on. 2 of them gripped my wrists like a manacled twin set, while the third had both arms tight around my waist. I repeated the effect with greater emphasis. Car alarms in the next street started ringing. This time, I confess, I expected to be left in the charkly grip of 3 charred corpses. But the boys were still there, breathing hard and holding on like grim death. Something was not quite right here. "Hold it steady," the girl said. I looked at her. She looked at me. She was a little bit taller than my current manifestation, with dark eyes, long dark hair. The other 2 boys stood on either side of her like an acneed guard of honor. I grew impatient. "What do you want?" I said. "You have something round your neck." The girl had a remarkably level and authoritative voice for someone so young. I guess she was about 13. "Says who? It's been in full view for the last 2 minutes, you cretin. It fell out of your t-shirt when we jumped you." "Oh, fair enough." "Hand it over." "No." She shrugged. "Then we'll take it. It's your funeral." "You don't really know who I am, do you?" I made it sound damn casual, with a side helping of menace. "You're not a magician." "Too right I'm not." She spat the words out. "A magician would know better than to trifle with one such as me." I was busy cranking up the awe factor again. Although, this is always fairly tricky when you have a brawny half-wit clasping you round your waist. The girl grinned coldly. "Would a magician do so well against your wickedness?" She had a point there. For a start, a magician wouldn't have wanted to come within a dog's bark of me without being protected up to the hilt with charms and pentacles. Next, he would have needed the help of imps to find me under my concealment. And finally, he would have had to conjure up a fairly heavyweight genie to subdue me. If he dared. But this girl and her boyfriends had done it all on their own, without seeming particularly fussed. I should have let fly a full-strength detonation or something, but I was too tired for anything fancy. I fell back on empty bluster. I laughed eerily. "I'm toying with you. That's empty bluster." I tried another tack. "Despite myself," I said, "I confess I'm intrigued. I applaud your bravery in daring to accost me. If you tell me your name and purpose, I will spare you. In fact, I might well be able to help you. I have many abilities at my command." To my disappointment, the girl clamped her hands over her ears. "Don't give me your weasel words, demon," she said. "I won't be tempted." "Surely you do not want my enmity," I went on, soothingly. "My friendship is greatly to be preferred." "I don't care about either," the girl said, lowering her hands. "I want whatever it is you have round your neck." "You can't have it. But you can have a fight if you like. Apart from the damage it'll do to you, I'll make sure I let off a signal that'll bring the night police down on us like gorgons from hell. You don't want their attention, do you?" That made her flinch a bit. I built on my advantage. "Don't be naive," I said. "Think about it. You're trying to rob me of a very powerful object. It belongs to a terrible magician. If you so much as touch it, he'll find you and nail your skin to his door." Whether it was this threat or the accusation of naivete that got to her, the girl was rattled. I could tell by the direction of her pout. Experimentally, I shifted one elbow a little. The corresponding boy grunted and tightened his grip on my arm. A siren sounded a few roads away. The girl and her bodyguards looked uneasily down the alley into the darkness. A few drops of rain began to fall from the hidden sky. "Enough of this," the girl said. She stepped towards me. "Careful," I said. She stretched out a hand. As she did so, I opened my mouth, very, very slowly. Then she reached for the chain around my neck. In an instant, I was a Nile crocodile, with jaws agape. I snapped down at her fingers. The girl shrieked and jerked her arm backwards faster than I would have believed possible. My snaggleteeth clashed just short of her retreating fingernails. I snapped at her again, thrashing from side to side in my captor's grasp. The girl squawked, slipped, and fell into a pile of litter, knocking over one of her two guards. My sudden transformation took my three boys by surprise, particularly the one who was clutching me around my wide, scaly midriff. His grip had loosened, but the other two were still hanging on. My long, hard tail scythed left, then right, making satisfyingly crisp contact with two thick skulls. Their brains, if they had any, were nicely addled. Their jaws slackened, and so did their grasps. One of the girl's two guards had been only momentarily shocked. He recovered himself, reached inside his jacket, emerged with something shiny in his hand. As he threw it, I changed again. The quick shift from my big, the croc, to small, a fox, was nicely judged, if I say so myself. The 6 hands that had been struggling to cope with large-scale scales suddenly found themselves clutching thin air as a tiny red bundle of fur and whirling claws dropped through their flailing fingers to the floor. At the same moment, a missile of flashing silver passed through the point where the croc's throat had recently been, and embedded itself in the metal door beyond. The fox ran up the alley, paws skittering on the slippery cobbles. A piercing whistle sounded ahead. The fox pulled up. Searchlights dipped and spun around the doors and the brickwork. Running feet followed the lights. That was all I needed. The night police were coming. As a beam swung towards me, I leaped fluidly into the open mouth of a plastic bin. Head, body, brush, gone. The light passed over the bin and went on down the alley. Men came now, shouting, blowing whistles, racing towards where I'd left the girl and her companions. Then a growling, an acrid smell, and something that might have been a big dog rushing after them into the night. The sounds echoed away. Curled snugly between a seeping bin bag and a vinegary crate of empty bottles, the fox listened, his ears pricked forwards. The shouts and whistles grew distant and confused, and to the fox, it seemed as if they merged and became an agitated howling. Then, the noise faded altogether. The alleyway was silent. Alone, in the foulness, the fox lay low.